Hi everyone, welcome to week 6 of English 101 Online. So this week we are moving from outlining our SA2 analysis to drafting. And what this video is going to focus on is really just getting a little more familiar with the rhetorical appeals that we introduced last week, and then going over kind of the structure of your draft. So I know this essay is probably different than essays that you've done in the past, but trust me, trust the process, and it'll get better as we go. So let's go ahead and get started. For this week, we got a few things that I'd like you to do. Make sure you complete reading You Writing, page 55 to 81. You can kind of skim through this. It's a description of the different modes or genres that you might write during a college course, and pay particular attention to the rhetorical analysis section, which is what we are working on. And then reflection 5 will be due Friday. I want you to give a summary of the artifact that you've chosen for essay 2, and then your thesis statement about that artifact. Why is it persuasive? What appeals does it use? That kind of thing. I know that your confidence in this kind of assignment is going to not be maybe the highest, but just try, all right? Just do your best, and then your classmates and I can help you kind of improve what you've got. And then your essay 2 draft is going to be due between Saturday and Monday. So I'll do my best to get quick feedback to you on your outlines, and then also just check the reflection feedback from classmates about your thesis. There is also an example essay too on Brightspace that you can use to kind of help you as you draft. So let's talk about ethos, pathos, and logos one more time. So I wanted to kind of go over in a little more detail each of these appeals and then examples to help you kind of identify in whatever piece you're analyzing. Can you pick out what is ethos, pathos, and logos? So ethos is an appeal to ethics. It depends on the credibility and expertise of the author. So some examples here. As a dentist, I see this problem a lot. I recommend using a sensitive toothpaste. This is ethos because it depends on this person, the dentist, credibility as a dentist. It's really what is the author's expertise or experience or background that makes them an expert on what they're saying. So if you're analyzing a song, for instance, is there anywhere where the singer kind of says, I know this experience, I'm an expert on this, what's happening in the piece? Logos, on the other hand, is an appeal to logic. This depends on facts. I think logos is one of the hardest to recognize because a lot of opinions are stated as fact. So, but this is where the writer is making the audience think by logically connecting two ideas. So this is using reasoning or things like the example here, if you don't turn in your homework, your grades will suffer. We kind of understand that's an obvious consequence. So logos is one of the more difficult, I think, to identify in like songs, but it's very common in speeches, in more of like public rhetoric. And then finally, pathos, I think, is probably the easiest to identify. This is using appeals to emotion, such as if we don't adopt the puppy, he will never find a home. Or if you decide not to come to Thanksgiving, it would break your grandma's heart. This is what is from the writer or from the speaker, it's making the audience feel either happiness, guilt, anger even. All of those are emotions that you might feel through a piece. So let's look at some examples. How about this one? As a doctor who studied sleep cycles and the effects of sleep deprivation, I'm here to advise you to make a conscious effort to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep. I definitely could use this advice. So let's see, ethos, pathos, or logos. If you said ethos, you would be correct. This is an example of ethos because it depends on the fact this person is saying, I'm a doctor, you can trust me. How about this one? If you don't need to jump in front of a train to know it's a bad idea, why do you need to try drugs to know if they're damaging? This one is logos. It's making a logical connection between, obviously we know jumping in front of a train is a bad idea, so you should know that doing drugs is a bad idea. This is sort of this example is a little manipulative, which I think logos we often use facts and logic in a way that can kind of like be twisted, which is what makes logos a little difficult to identify. All right, how about this one? As your father, I love you and only want the best for you. Therefore, when I ask you not to go, please listen to me. You're right. This one's pathos. It's using the emotion of, your dad saying, I want what's best for you, and please listen to me because I love you and I want the best for you. Let's look at some more difficult examples. This is a quote from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. He says, 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. If you said pathos, you would be correct. There is also a little bit of logos here, but a lot of the words here are emotional. A lonely island, languishing in the corners of American society, finding yourself in exile. These provide an emotional response. The logos part is that 100 years later. This was a point where Martin Luther King was talking about we are 100 years from the end of slavery, and yet we still experience some of these problems. And that's a logical appeal. He's saying, logically, 100 years later, we should be further along. So you could kind of do both here. All right, how about this one? This is from Susan B. Anthony's On Women's Right to Vote speech. She says, it was we the people, not we the white male citizens, nor yet we the male citizens, but we the whole people who formed the Union. And we formed it not to give the blessings of liberty, but to secure them, not to the half of ourselves or the half of our prosperity, but to the whole people, women as well as men. Susan B. Anthony gave this speech at a convention for women's suffrage, so she was arguing for women's right to vote. So here we see really a lot of the appeal to logos. Sorry, it was we the people, not we the men. She's saying logically, the people should include women as well. So hopefully these examples give you an idea of what we're going for. I know when you're analyzing, sometimes it's kind of ambiguous. So as long as you can say, this is what I think the song or poem or speech is saying, and, this is what I think the appeals that are being used, that's fine. As long as you can support it, you're good. All right? Just don't forget thesis and support. All right. So your outline should give you some ideas of how to organize Essay 2. I kind of envision us breaking this into 4 pieces. Your introduction that introduces the piece that you're analyzing and what you think about it. A summary that kind of describes what the piece is about. So that, remember your reader may not have heard the song, read the speech, listened to the music. So what does your reader need to know about the piece? And then the body, your response, is going to be the biggest part of the essay. This is where you provide support for what you think about the piece. Why do you think it's persuasive? What rhetorical move is it using? And then a conclusion is going to kind of sum up what you've said, but also give final thoughts to your reader. This is where you might suggest lasting impacts of the artifact that you've chosen, or you might discuss other interpretations. You might encourage your reader to listen to the artist that you've analyzed and see if they see similar things that you have. So there is also some advice in here for writing your summary. Make sure you're not repeating. Use strong verbs like the singer argues instead of just says. Make sure you include the title of the piece and the author. I know a lot of people will be like, this song talks about blah, blah, blah. And many times I read that and I'm like, which song? Be specific for me. And then go in order of the piece itself. When you get to your response, think about specific pieces of the artifact that you want to talk about. What are some quotes that really have an impact to you as a reader? And then don't forget to talk about those rhetorical appeals. I know that's kind of new for us, but give it a try. All right. Do you notice any emotion being used? Do you notice any kind of logical reasoning? And then keep in mind, you don't need to focus on everything. There's probably a lot more that you're not going to talk about in your essay. So just kind of write and see what comes out. Write about the piece and just see what happens. There is an example on Brightspace that you can use. This was from a previous student about I think it's called The Dream, or The Dream's Killing Me. It's a Morgan Wallen song, and a student of mine wrote an analysis of it a couple years ago, and I think it's a good example of a draft that we're kind of going for. Finally, next week, we're going to do our first peer review of the course. So instead of conferencing with me like we did for Essay 1, this time what you guys are going to do is post your draft to our reflection space, and then you're going to peer review, give specific, clear feedback to 3 different people in our reflection space. So this will be our sort of bigger assignment for next week. So just keep in mind you'll want to have your draft complete by next week so that you can post it. Remember, draft is just a draft. It's not perfect. It doesn't have to be. But I would like you to have something to share with others and to get feedback on. So if you need help along the way, I am here. Be sure to email me with any questions or concerns, but I will talk to you soon.